Hello, everyone. Good day to everybody. Welcome. I am Jan Jeremias. I know all of you here know me, but for those listening who don't know me, for more than 35 years, I've focused on health. I've woven that into the fabric of my own life. And over the past 2 decades, I have blended my roots in clinical research science with a deep love for holistic wellness to support both people and their pets to live longer, fuller, um, more vibrant lives. My passion is helping others see the whole picture of their well being and gently translate that into simple, everyday plans or blueprints for health. I feel that people thrive in communities like this. And so connection and kindness are very dear to me. And I share that passion with my dear friend and collaborator, Mary Jane McQueen. And together we believe in bringing more kindness into the world, one creative moment, one conscious breath, and one heartfelt conversation at a time. So, heartfelt thank you to Mary Jane and to each and every one of you for showing up, for listening with open hearts. This community shines because of you. And I know that I'm so grateful that you're here. And I know that Mary Jane is too. And so, Mary Jane, I'll pass it to you, please.
Thank you, my friend. Yes, welcome everyone. And I always feel blessed to be in presence with all of you. And my collaboration with Jan is definitely a blessing that's come into my life, and I truly cherish that. So thank you, Jan, for that. Um, so I have had my own creative studio for say the last 6 years, I guess now. And I did work for 31 years in corporate marketing before I started MJ McQueen Creative Studio. And now it's my honor and pleasure to serve both my fellow entrepreneurs to get their missions and visions out into the world, as well as to do other creative projects that support other people's special events, etc. And of course, Spirit Born Imaginings, as always, is a place of presence, compassion, and curiosity, and just love the fact that we can gather here for moments of mindfulness, breath, and awareness, and perhaps some creative reflection. Um, as we come together in self kindness and transformation. And always there is nothing to do or achieve here, only an invitation to arrive exactly as you are in this moment. And today I wanted to begin with a poem by Jan, and I love John Rodell because he just has such an interesting play of words. And there's no really title to this poem, as often there isn't with him. However, um, it's really about a reflection about what it means to love yourself. So hopefully you enjoy it as well. So I'll begin. Are you ready for things to get back to normal? The woman asked me from across the waiting room. Like normal was the goal we were all supposed to be breathlessly racing towards. I smiled and shook my head. I'm very good at normal, I said. I'd like to give weird a try. She blinked. I blinked back. Things got awkward. I always make things awkward. She blinked again. I blinked back. At that point, we were basically communicating in eyelash Morse code. So I slowly blinked out the poem I'd been carrying around inside me. I'm not waiting for things to go back to normal. Normal already had too much of me. It kept asking for smaller versions of who I really was. I'm ready for things to get stranger, wilder, more honest. Normal played the same few songs on a loop until we all forgot how to dance. But something in us has cracked open. Something in us is humming. I can feel it in my chest like a loose spark. We're all shaking our old shells off, turning into these polka dotted creatures with new wings we don't know how to use yet. Your plain old blood is shifting colors. Mine too. You can feel it, can't you? That low rumble in your spirit, like a car warming up in the driveway before a long overdue road trip. We're not made to stay the same. We never were. Normal had its season. Let the strange have its turn. There's a river of light running in you that didn't even exist before you were born. You are rare. You are wild. You're beautifully off center. And this, right now, is exactly your kind of season because you weren't built for normal. You were built for wonder. After I finished, I worried that she hadn't understood the poem I had painstakingly blinked her way. She squinted at me and said, I think you've got something in your eye. Yep, I always make things awkward. What a blessing it is to be strange.
I'm sorry, you just gotta love him.
He's hysterical and
He's just
true at the same time.
absolutely always cracks me up. So, welcome again, everybody. We're so glad you're here. Today, we're exploring a question that is simple and yet not always easy. What would love look like here? Not in easy moments, not in the moments where everything is flowing and light, but here, when life feels challenging, when we find ourselves in conflict with others, when we are in conflict within ourselves, when we've made mistakes or feel like we've failed, and even in the moments where we've been hurt, dismissed, or harmed. We're not talking about romantic love today. We're talking about something deeper, steadier, and often quieter. The kind of love that shows up in messy, complicated, very human moments. What does love look like when we're overwhelmed? What does love look like when we want to react, shut down, or turn away? What does love look like when we're carrying pain? Maybe love looks like compassion, softening toward ourselves instead of criticizing. Maybe it looks like kindness in the words we choose or the tone we take. Maybe it looks like courage to stay present, to tell the truth, to face what's hard. And sometimes love looks like boundaries. It looks like honoring what is not okay. It looks like protecting your energy, your heart, your well being. Love is not passive. Love is not self abandonment. Love is not pretending everything is fine. Love is a practice. It's the pause before we react. It's the breath that creates space. It's the choice to respond with awareness, even when it's difficult. So, as we begin, we invite you to gently hold this question within yourself. What would love look like here for me in this moment? And allow whatever arises without judgment, without needing to fix, just a willingness to notice, to feel, and to be present. What does love look like here?
Beautiful reflection, Jan. It's true. In this moment, what does love look like here? For me, I can say in this present moment, love looks like being in presence with community, being here. Love is being surrounded by the support of my beautiful friend Jan. And just love looks like loving life no matter what it's bringing you. That's a hard lesson. or it can be, but it's much easier here.
Hmm. That is true. Love is about being present. And I think we see that. Love is about action. It's about being there, in some form. That it doesn't, I mean, it's very nice when it's physically present, when it's something in your environment, but it doesn't really need to be something that's directly there. It could be, just an exchange or something, but love is some form of presence. And maybe that presence is within yourself, so it's your own presence that is, and that's what love looks like. So it's awareness and presence of you being there for yourself and then being there for others.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it does come back to the same adage that we've spoken of many times before. It's like you have to fill your own cup with love and compassion and empathy for yourself first, and that way you can ripple it out into the world. Because, like, as adage says, is you can't pour from an empty cup, so you need to replenish your own first. Just a reminder that you too deserve love in whatever its form.
Absolutely. I think that that is so absolutely true. I think that we have to learn how to, and maybe, the whole idea of loving ourselves is like, you know, doesn't resonate with you, but maybe it's, words like compassion and kindness, um, of being able to treat yourself with respect, to honor yourself, like all those things. And that is love, but maybe it's not that word that you're using. You're choosing a different word. Um, because I think that it has to begin with us. Uh, I so believe that. I don't think it just takes on a totally different tone if it doesn't. And I think the key to, after preparing for this week, and um, I think the key to healing, and however you frame healing, whether that's physical healing, emotional, spiritual, um, is compassion. And I think that's self compassion. And, we have to remind ourselves of that, I think, often to be compassionate to ourselves.
Yeah, because it's if it's very too true, as we were saying that before, that we really do need to remind ourselves of, because when we really come down to the root of it, with self-compassion, it can help to build like a better emotional strength and resilience, and just being present right here, right now. So, like, what does love look like here was a really poignant expression that Jan had come across. And it's like, what does it look like here in this moment? Um, and just being, I mean, for me, there's a sense of almost, there's a kindness, empathy, and compassion towards self, but there's also a feeling of gratitude for where I'm at this particular moment, or where we're at a particular moment, whatever that is, finding those little glimmers of light that bring us joy, um, and love back to ourselves.
Yeah, because I really do. Thank you, Mary Jane, because I love that. And I think that, the word, and I think we mentioned this last week, but the and if not, I mentioned it somewhere else. Um, the word love is very watered down in our language as an English language. We use love for everything, you know.
Yes.
We love, like I said, I love that phrase, or I love that Mary Jane, and then we use it to, express love toward a person, toward clothing, toward a photograph, I mean, it's such a watered down word. And I think that we have to, like, for me, I think I have to find other words almost Not that I don't, obviously. I know what love is, and I feel it, whatever, but I need different language around that. And I think the such words as things like compassion and presence, um, are so much, resonate with me so deeply because I think that love, the word itself, love, almost falls short. And I think, and it's not so much that we don't have other words. I think that people have gotten very comfortable in using like love as this kind of like, umbrella term. I mean, we have other words, but I think that people's languaging has become so limited that it's almost like they're lazy and they don't look for other words to choose. They don't look for other words that might, you know, that might like, encompass what they're talking about. It's like, why bother searching for that word? I can just say I love it. you know. And but I think what happens is then the true value and the true, meaning of love does become somewhat diminished. And and then it changes. And so I think that we need other words. As Krista Tippett says, love becomes a Subaru, like a car. Sorry if you have a Subaru. Subarus are really big in Connecticut. It's a big, like a lot of it's like a very popular car here. So certain areas of the country, Oregon, the same way. You have a lot of Subarus. When I was in Oregon and lived there for a few months. So yeah, but it's really true. It becomes it's so overused in our society, at least in America. And I know that in many other cultures, there are different words for different types of love.
We need those in English too, I think.
I do. I mean, yeah. I mean, I know that, in the interview, I mean, I think about Hebrew, and Hebrew is an interesting language just because every word comes down to like a three-letter root.
Hmm.
And then it's nuanced as far as past, present, gender, kind of thing around that. But every word can be narrowed down to that three-letter word. And then there are different words for different things. And so I think in a lot of languages they do that. They have different words, and I think English, like I said, we need to come up with a list of words. We'll go to our expert wordsmith Al for a list of words that actually could be used, instead of love, where we could just like, okay, different listings of different things. And so yeah, but we need to expand ourselves a little bit more, I think, and to recognize and also to expand our sort of our understanding or our awareness of what love actually means. That does mean compassion. So like
Hmm.
broaden it. It does mean compassion, and it means kindness, and it means setting boundaries in certain, in circumstances. It also can mean toughness in other circumstances. Where we were talking about, Mary Jane, you had mentioned last week um when we were chatting about tough love, about
Yes.
it's not necessarily, easy, and circumstances where you're trying to protect yourself or protect somebody else.
Yes. Well, that's where the strength in compassion comes in love, right? I mean, I think in the English language, because like I said, in common usage, the word love is used very frequently. So it's kind of almost the word diluted keeps coming into my mind.
No,
So
that's a
I'll
great
use that.
word. Thank you. Thank you. That was really, I was looking for something. So thank you for bringing it in.
I'm like, diluted? Okay, that's what's coming to my mind. But so I'll share that. So it's all right. I don't mind being, as the poem said, like I'll embrace my weird. It's okay. But yeah, it's true. It is really important because I mean, yeah. Tough love is bringing compassion even when you know, um, when it's hard to do. that's to me, compassion is like, for me, it's like love in action. It
Hmm.
it's the active version of love. It's not just like, oh, I love that. There's like compassion. It just feels, to me, it feels like somebody coming up virtually, literally, figuratively, whatever, and giving you a huge embrace, going, you know, I'm here, so I love that.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I love how the different languages are being shared for
I,
about love. I love.
yeah, I mean, because I'm looking at the ones I'm typing, and the word in Hebrew for love is ahava, is
Hmm.
love. Um, Shares the same root as lave, which is heart.
Makes sense.
Um, Chesed, which means kindness,
Hmm.
is also used in conjunction. And then avodah, which is service, is serving others, serving yourself.
So
You
it's
know,
love and service, basically.
right? Love and service, or love and action.
Hmm. Love.
Uh,
I love that. There you go. See, it was about to come out.
So I
It's
think that it's really interesting how we in other languages they very easily incorporate other words for different things. In English, I had this whole conversation with my mother about English the other day, because my mom's been visiting, staying with me. It's been wonderful all week, and we were talking about it because she was saying that it used to be that, I mean, my mother's a first generation, and when they came, I mean, my mother's German, so they never spoke German outside the house. That was like my grandfather told them they weren't allowed. But a little bit at home. I mean, my mother spoke fluent German, but I don't really even think they spoke German in the house so much when they got to the US. And it was so they learned English very quickly, and that's what they spoke outside,
Mhm.
always. And how now you have a lot of people who immigrate to this country, who move to this country, who never learn English. And so we were just talking about English and the fact that you can go out now and not hear English at all.
Yeah, it brings
Pretty
the
interesting.
world even closer, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does bring the world closer. And I know Austin had his hand up, and I would love to hear what you say. Love. Thank you. That time I said it on purpose. Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Jan. Beautiful topic today. And staying on topic, one thing that fascinates me about language is kind of like you talked about. You might not have used the term emotional intelligence, but I do find it fascinating how if you approach different languages and how they are presenting, so to speak, that uh, you will find often there are words to help articulate emotion, no intelligence, not just differentiations, but here's an example. So in some cultures there is, I think it's India, but there is a term for the feeling. So there's the emotion for I think it's like a bad haircut or something like that. And this really made me think about I guess in my personal life right now I've taken up learning Spanish again. And one of the fascinating things that I found, um, and this is just tying in a personal example, but one thing I found was how for Spanish, there's a tendency to not need as many words because context is what actually is kind of driving more of the bandwidth, if you will. Whereas in English, we do have so many words. Now, being brought up in America in this culture, English being my primary language, um, still also fascinating in the same way of um, how we, I believe the word dilute came up, but also how we expand and we create our own umbrellas and we get jargon. If you go up north, you go south, or you go out west, the little things change, and that's such a beautiful awareness, just in myself at least, coming to terms with it. And I'm going to end with tagging along with the poem. Mary, I told you I'd make this a thing. Here I go. So there are two words that I've been saying for a long time, even though I know that they're not, you could say collectively accepted in the English language. So this is my freak, are the words blunk and don't laugh. And blunk and you you sprang in the lice. You sprung, hold on. What's the other one? Blunk or something. Oh, I can't remember the other one. But anyway, yeah, you blunk, which is like a past tense of blink or blinked. And because when I heard that in the earlier, I was like, oh, I've got to bring up these two words. I can't think of the other word, but that's my part. I'm complete.
Thank you, Austin. I mean, I like what you shared about. I do think that emotional intelligence. I think there is like almost the nuances of other languages where so much more is maybe if you understand like I think if people understood English and the origins of the words, they would get that. But most people don't understand like the origin of where a word came from. And I think when a word is created, there's a lot of, there are a lot of nuances and a lot of like sort of ideas and thoughts that evolve and go with that word. So I think that for English, I think most people just don't know that. Um, they just don't understand the meanings behind words.
The other
And
word was snost. So it's a made up word for you snooze and you lose, but the past tense of snooze and lose. Snost.
That's wonderful. But languaging is so interesting. And I think we don't, with the word love, and we've talked about like, so what does love look like here? Love is laughter. Love is conversations like these where we actually get and we kind of tweeze out the meanings behind words. And I think that's also what makes it so complicated in conversation, because I think that people have different ideas of what words mean. And so, somebody may say something, and that's why, communicating can get complicated sometimes because someone says something or hears something and they hear something totally different than what you had meant. And then also via like, communicating via text and not hearing tone of voice and, whether something is said with a little hint of sarcasm or humor. And all of a sudden, that can't come across in written form and someone takes offense when there was really no offense meant at all.
Absolutely. Yes. It's amazing how we can communicate in seconds via text, but we really can't communicate still as human beings, unless we are actually speaking like face face to face or even on a phone or whatever it is. It's just it's interesting how the like I was mentioning, it's like there's so many nuances in language, and because tone really influences the nuance as well, right? So what you're speaking to, Jan, it is interesting how even still we you know it's we, we can't always communicate that. But I love Shamus put in the chat that love is being present for self and others. Yeah, absolutely. That's that's a good all-encompassing phrase. Thank you, Seamus, as always. But yeah, it's interesting, it's a, yeah, what does love look like here? I mean, and being present really
Mhm.
influences that, right? What does it look like here? Does it mean being of service to somebody? Does it mean listening? Does it mean, giving yourself some self-nurturing that you well deserve? What does that mean? What does love look like here, right now, in the present moment?
That's right. In the present moment, because I think then also it is a living and breathing
Yes.
feeling because it changes, it morphs. love at this moment might look like this. In 5 seconds, it might look like something else.
Absolutely.
And I think that it becomes so much less rigid and kind of like, well, this is love. Well, it becomes more fluid. Love can be an embrace in one situation. And then, we were talking about, we got on, we were talking about Tonka had done something, and I was like kind of glancing, Mary Jane and I were laughing about, like how so much of it is tone and how when I speak to him. My mother's always floored. She's like, he totally understands you. Like, it's so funny. It's gotten to the point where I probably have to spell certain words. So, like, I don't like cookie, like, yeah, or walk, because, I say it in a particular tone, and then all of a sudden, I mean, he's ready to go out, so I think tone plays such a role, and we could say anything sometimes. And I think you see it with kids too a lot, where like you can read them a textbook, and if it sounds like fun, they're giggling when they're little. They don't have any idea of what the words actually mean. Yeah, their ears perk right up. And Kimberly, please.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies. Um, I love what you were just saying with Tonka, Jen. There's so many creators that I follow. This one in particular, where he has a very loving relationship with his dog. He calls him, it's a little schnauzer, and he calls him his son. And they dress similar, and the way he talks to him. Um, when you were just sharing about Tonka, it's that connection. And it is so loving. Like, it just radiates. And the dog is like listening to him so intently. And what's really interesting in this specific instance is how he is demonstrating the dog, I mean, his love and appreciation. He puts his hand up on his shoulder and hugs him. That I don't know. It's just amazing. When you're talking about love and love being an action, right? Yeah, that love is action. It's a verb. It's a verb for a reason. But as I was listening to everyone um, share in particular, um, I was thinking about love in those moments where our emotions are the strongest, and what does that truly mean? And what does it require of us? Because it's not just about the emotion, it's not necessarily how we feel, especially in those moments, right? Um, it's what do we do next? What is our choice? What are we choosing in the midst of that? And that's what really honestly for me comes up, because we have days, Valentine's Day, this is relationship day, this is this day, that day, you know and we think, I don't know if it was Austin that was talking about context, but it really does matter. The context, I mean, you can't, especially when we're talking about love, at least from my perspective, even though we may not acknowledge the fact that context is important, really at the end of the day, that's truly what matters. And if we're present in the present moment, and we're in one of those moments where we're feeling really strong emotion. For me, it's like asking ourselves that question, what does choosing love actually require of us? What is love requiring of me in this moment? What does it look like? You know, um, Not just the emotion, the fleeting emotion, not just the feeling, but when that kind of dissipates, when it kind of falls, and it loses its intensity, what will you do next? And for me, when we're really getting to the heart of the matter, when we're really peeling back the layers, whether it's a friend, whether it is someone in our community, there's different layers to it, right? Whether it's an important person in our life, a spouse, partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the label is. For me, when we say, love is action, love is a verb, and you're in that moment, in these moments, what do you do? Because I think for me, again, just my opinion, that's what reveals, you know, that's, you know, that's when we become, I mean, I'm saying it figuratively, but that's when we become the most naked, right? Like, what do we do? What do we do in those moments? But that's kind of what's coming up for me as you have this topic of love.
Thank,
So back to you, Jim.
thank you so much, Kimberly. And I think it is an action. It is what it is. Sometimes I think it's actively pausing or actively sitting back and saying, okay, like creating a little space, getting a little perspective. I think sometimes that's what love is in that moment when there are extreme things. Love is collecting yourself. Love is pausing and to choose how to respond versus reacting. Like that is love, and that's active to me. Um, the other
Just
thing
come
is
off
that,
mute, John. I
yeah,
wasn't able to put my hand up. Is it okay if I just have a quick comment?
yeah, sure, please.
Yeah, lovely, because I love it. Between emotional intelligence and being present and choice, there's all sorts of words coming up like that touch on previous conversations as well. But the one thing I wanted to say was it was kind of choosing to be present, like, and it reminded me of Rumi's poem, The Guest, of choosing to kind of acknowledge and honor every guest and be with them. And I think that's what love is really, is choosing to be with every guest, even those guests that are unpleasant. And I think it's a lovely way of defining love, or one definition at least of love, is creating the space to choose to be with and acknowledge every guest, because every guest has a value, I think. And I think that's part of love, and unconditional love, I think, really. So yeah, it's a lovely conversation. Thanks, guys.
Oh, thank you so much, Seamus. That was wonderful. And and you created this umbrella, kind of this way of grouping it all together, which was wonderful. Um, and I came to this topic came up because of a podcast I had listened to, and I shared it with Seamus and a few other people. Um, and in it, it's an interview with Krista Tippett and Rabbi Shai Held, and he talks about a situation where he was at his book at a book signing he was giving in. I'm pretty sure it was in New York City in Manhattan, and this 80 plus, well, woman in her late 80s came up to him and said, she was the victim of domestic violence, and she said to him, like, how am I supposed to love my spouse? How is that even possible? So first of all, that brought up one of the aspects of love to me, which we haven't talked about, and that is love is forgiveness. At times, love is forgiveness for forgiving ourselves and forgiving other people sometimes. But she was like, how can I love him? They were talking about phrases like, love thy neighbor as thyself, or, love your enemy. And, how do you do that? And he first began the conversation with her by saying, one is that he was sorry that she had been the victim of domestic violence for 15 years and lived in that kind of fear that someone shouldn't have to live with that for one day, let alone 15 years. And then he said to her something which really struck me, is he said, if you could wish that your ex-husband recognize what he has done and the trauma that he had caused her and her children, could she do that? And she said, like, yes. And he said, and what would that be? And she said to him, that would be love. And I think that, and then he now feels like he sort of navigates the world with, what does love look like here in this situation, amongst, like, you're having an argument with someone who has very different views, and saying to yourself, okay, what does love look like here? And very practical type situations. And I've been thinking about that all week, in my interactions and exchanges with other people and with myself. Like, you get up, you don't feel well, something hurts or whatever. What does love look like here? Like, maybe love looks like rest, or maybe love looks like compassion. Love looks like a good night's sleep, or maybe love looks like, understanding and giving someone the benefit of the doubt. And I think that we have to realize how that people are not black and white, that there's a lot of, gray. That when you look at human nature and people's human views on something, which may be different than yours. And I've been thinking about this living in the United States at the moment, and everybody being so polar, like, direct opposite, that's the way it feels, divided in a lot of ways, is to recognize what we share. So to me, it's recognizing, love may look like this recognition of, like, oh, okay, well, basically they're acting this way, or they're saying this because, they're trying to protect their family, or they're trying to keep their family, fed, clothed, or whatever. And that's what they believe is going to help. And so that's what love looks like here. So that's what I've been thinking about, those hard, like, those hard types and hard circumstances where love is not easy. And Al, please.
Yeah, interesting. The topic of today is love. So love is like many splendid things. There's one movie with that title, I think, or very close to it. So it's so important that we embrace love every day. So I got the acronym for this week for love. It's living outstandingly, very exuberantly. It implies a life filled with an overflowing, contagious energy and enthusiasm, and a conscious choice to embrace joy and vitality. So vitality, which means that living in zest and zen, the double Z's, with a and like Mary Jane always with her contagious laugh. So which makes everybody in the room so happy and exuberant. So basically, this is like giving us the opportunity. When we say love is everyone is living. Without love, everybody will be in a dull state. So there's nobody around us, and you're like living alone, and something like you're in outer planet. Like Mars. yeah, just there, and maybe one day Elon Musk will change that, because he's flying people to Mars and living in a new planet. So, so basically, people just with this love, everybody is being exuberant every day. So this is something that we should just practice. Yeah, the living with love and in Zen, and zest, double Z. Thank you.
I'm glad my laugh can help everyone. Just had to say that.
I think it's, yes, you have a wonderful laugh. I thought maybe I would share, just in case people have not heard the Rumi poem. I thought maybe I would just share the poem that Seamus was referring to, The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight, the dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
I love that poem.
Yeah, that poem and one other, I think, were two poems that really transformed for me how I reflected on the whole, I think, whole buffet of emotions that were present for me,
Right.
that were just part of the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting with that poem for a long period of time and thinking to myself, well, it's one thing when they arrive. I'm not so sure I could welcome them, like invite them in, but when they are there, I can welcome them. I can allow them. And so that poem became very huge and, my personal journey. And I've shared it so many times in different forms in different places, because I think it is so true, is this whole idea of love is acceptance. It's not only being present, but it's accepting all that we are.
Yes, that's so true. I'm really glad that we decided to bring this forward as a topic for today, because more now than ever. I mean, I know it's always present, but it just seems to be a needed conversation right now, because sometimes, often, it just, in my view of the things happening, it's not an easy, it's not easy to um love in the situations, in certain situations. But I like the word it's not a resigned acceptance, but an acceptance of this is as it is, and loving them anyway. um you don't have to love their actions, but you can love that little child that's fighting within. So just always embracing that.
Yeah, thank you, because I think it's not always, it's very much needed and not easy.
Absolutely. It is not easy. But wow, what a wonderful conversation today. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to bring us in our wondrous meditation moment.
Okay. So if there are no closing comments, we'll move into that meditation. Take a moment to settle in. Allow your body to find a comfortable position. Feet resting on the floor, body being supported in some way. Gently close your eyes if you're not driving, if that feels comfortable, or soften your gaze. Begin by bringing your awareness to your breath, not changing it, just noticing the natural rhythm of your inhale and your exhale. Let the breath arrive and let it leave. Now begin to bring your awareness into your body. Notice where your body meets the surface you're sitting on, how your feet may be touching the floor. And gently bring your attention to the area or areas of your body where you feel love lives. No need to imagine anything, just notice this space. Gently invite into your awareness a situation in your life that feels a little challenging. Not the most overwhelming, just something that's present for you. It might be a moment of conflict, a place where you feel stuck, or even something within yourself that feels difficult to hold at the moment. Just notice what arises as you hold this situation. Notice what happens in your body. Is there tension, tightness, a holding, or a gripping? Without needing to change it, just notice it. And now, very gently ask yourself, what would love look like here? Not forcing an answer, just allowing the question to rest within you. Perhaps love looks like compassion, a softening to yourself. You might silently offer, may I meet myself with compassion. Perhaps love looks like kindness in your thoughts, in your words. May I be kind to myself in this moment. Perhaps love looks like courage, the willingness to stay, to feel, to be present. May I have the courage to face what is here. And perhaps love looks like a boundary, a quiet knowing of what is okay and what is not, a gentle honoring of your own needs. May I honor what is true to me. Allow yourself and whatever arises to be enough. No right answers, just awareness, just presence. And take a slow, gentle breath in and a soft exhale out. Again, breathing in and then allowing a letting go. And as you sit here, know that love is something that will change, that it will morph, that it will flow. It is not something to perfect. It is something you return to. You return again and again in small, quiet ways. Presence, awareness, compassion, kindness, boundaries. When you're ready, begin to bring your awareness back to the room, noticing your body, your breath, maybe wiggle fingers and toes. And when it feels right, let your eyes slowly open, and take a moment to notice what is here at this moment, and perhaps carry this question with you. What would love look like here?
That was lovely, Jan.
Thank you. So thank you all for joining us today. Please take a moment to connect with us during the week. Take a moment to visit our YouTube channel, maybe like, share, comment on this recording or any others. We have a few things coming up. Mary Jane and I have a workshop on Saturday, May 2nd at 2 p.m. from Heart to Heart. Oh, that's the wrong one. My apologies. To update those notes.
Yeah.
And we have a 4-part series with Darlene that's coming up on May 28th, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Thursday night. Thursday night at 7. It's the first of 4. So that's beginning on May 28th. There'll be more information going out about that this week.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, yeah. So have a wonderful week, everybody.
Yes.
And I hope you carry that question with you. What does love look like here?
And thank you for being here.
Absolutely. This is love.
Mm-hmm.